The rain had just started when I stepped out of the taxi, nerves dancing beneath my skin. I was already 15 minutes late to the biggest dinner of my life. The first official meeting with my wife Sophia's ultra-wealthy, famously traditional parents. Everything about the night was meant to be perfect. My suit was freshly pressed, the vintage wine I'd brought from my tiny savings was tucked under my arm, and I had rehearsed my polite hellos and respectful nods 100 times in front of the mirror. Sophia had warned me. "Don't be too casual," she said. "My father hates that. And please don't talk too much about your job. He still doesn't really understand what freelance design means." She meant well, but it still stung. She came from the kind of family where job titles had weight, not soul. I wasn't a hedge fund manager or corporate lawyer. I created branding for small bakeries and custom graphics for YouTubers. Not glamorous, but honest. Still, tonight wasn't about ego. It was about earning their approval. I wanted to be the kind of man they'd accept for their only daughter. The restaurant was just down the block, a gleaming French fusion spot with valet parking and gold-plated menus. I checked my watch again, heart racing. 20 minutes late now. Sophia hadn't texted, but I knew she was stressed, probably already apologizing on my behalf. I picked up my pace. As I reached the corner across from the restaurant, I saw her. An elderly woman in a beige coat was struggling at the edge of the crosswalk, trying to balance 2 bags of groceries and a cane while the light blinked red. People passed her without stopping, umbrellas up, coats drawn, heads down like the rain made them blind. She tried to step off the curb, and one of her bags slipped. Apples scattered across the wet street. Without thinking, I rushed over. "Ma'am, let me help you," I said, kneeling to grab the runaway apples. She looked startled at first, then grateful. "Oh, thank you, dear. My legs aren't what they used to be," she said, her voice soft but shaking from embarrassment. "I've got you," I said, holding her elbow gently. "Let's get you across." We walked slowly. Every second felt like an hour, the rain growing heavier, soaking through my suit. The wine bottle slipped slightly in the paper bag under my arm. Cars honked. Lights flashed. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Probably Sophia. I didn't look. When we finally reached the far curb, I helped her sit down on a dry patch of concrete ledge beneath a closed storefront's awning. "You okay?" I asked, crouching beside her. She smiled. "You're kind. Not many people stop these days." I nodded, trying not to glance at my watch again. "Where are you headed? I can call someone for you." No. My son's coming to get me. Just needed to get to this corner. He'll spot me from the car." I hesitated. Every part of me screamed to run, to explain to Sophia that traffic was awful or my phone died or anything but the truth, that I was late because I helped a stranger cross the street. I stood to go, and she reached for my wrist. Her hand was cold but firm. "You're going to be okay, you know." I blinked. "Pardon." She smiled again. "Whatever you're rushing toward, whoever you're trying to impress, just remember what you did here. That means something. And whoever doesn't see that, maybe they're the ones who don't belong in your life." I nodded politely, thanked her, and jogged toward the restaurant. Heart pounding from more than the run. Inside, the warmth and elegance of the place hit me like a wall. Candlelight flickered on crystal glasses. Classical music played softly. And at the corner booth I saw them. Sophia, her stern-faced father in a tailored navy suit, her perfectly poised mother in pearls, and her older brother, a carbon copy of her dad with a sharper glare. Sophia spotted me and stood quickly, smiling too big. "He's here," she said. I approached the table, drenched and disheveled, clutching the soaked wine bag like a trophy. Her father looked me up and down. "Traffic?" he asked dryly. "No," I said, catching my breath. There was a woman outside. Elderly. Her bag broke in the rain. I stopped to help her. A beat of silence. Her father didn't blink. "And that took 25 minutes? She couldn't walk well," I said. I couldn't leave her in the rain. Sophia's face froze. Her mother sipped her wine. Her brother muttered, "Interesting priorities." I took the empty seat beside Sophia, still catching my breath. That's when the maitre d' walked up, flustered, breathless. "Apologies for the interruption," he said, "but we have a very urgent message for Mr. Daniel Foster." "Me?" Everyone at the table turned. Yes, I said, confused. The maitre d' smiled awkwardly. There's someone who'd like to speak with you. If you could step outside for just a moment. Her father raised an eyebrow. Is this going to be a pattern? I stood slowly, unsure of what was happening. As I walked back into the rain-soaked entrance of the restaurant, my heart pounding, I saw a sleek black car pull up. And out stepped the elderly woman, now dry, now smiling, and flanked by two men in dark suits. She walked up to me like we were old friends. There he is, she said. The man who helped me when no one else would. And what she said next changed my life forever. I stood frozen in the doorway, the rain misting behind me, as the elderly woman stepped forward, now completely transformed from a shivering old stranger into someone commanding and regal. The two men in suits flanked her like she was royalty, which in a way, she apparently was. Her smile didn't waver as she reached for my hand and gave it a small squeeze. I'm sorry for the drama, she said gently. But I had to see if you were who I hoped you were. I stammered, glancing back toward the restaurant where Sophia and her family were surely growing more irritated by the second. I don't understand. One of the men handed me a business card, thick, embossed with gold lettering. My eyes scanned the name, Evelyn Moreau. Under it, Chairwoman Moreau Holdings. A name I recognized instantly. Her face, now that I was really seeing it, clicked into place too. I'd seen her in magazines, on business profiles, Forbes lists. The Moreau name was connected to tech, shipping, real estate, philanthropy, and billions of dollars. I know you're late, she said, glancing toward the glowing restaurant. But give me 5 minutes. I promise it will be worth it. Stunned, I followed her to the car, where the door was already being held open. Inside the black SUV, warmth filled the space, and she gestured for me to sit beside her. I clutched the wet wine bottle on my lap like a security blanket. I get approached by a lot of people, Daniel, she began, her voice calm and rich like aged velvet. People who want jobs, investments, endorsements, handouts. You can imagine. And I've learned over time that wealth, it brings out the worst in most people. I nodded quietly, unsure if I was supposed to respond. But today, she continued, turning slightly toward me, I stood on a street corner, intentionally vulnerable. No assistants, no chauffeurs, just an old woman trying to cross a rainy street. And you were the only one who stopped. Not for attention. Not for a reward. Just because it was right. I cleared my throat. Anyone would have done it. That's where you're wrong, she said. They didn't. She pulled a small velvet pouch from her coat and handed it to me. I hesitated, opening it carefully. Inside was a vintage gold pen. Not just any pen. I recognized the design immediately from my time studying design history. It was a 1930s Waterman, rare, priceless. It was my father's, she said. He signed the deeds for his first business with it. I want you to have it. I can't accept this, I said, voice cracking a little. You don't even know me. But I do, she replied. Because how someone treats a stranger tells me everything I need to know about them. There was a silence that filled the car like a soft thunder. Then she smiled again. Tell me about your work. What you actually do. The real version, not the polished dinner party answer. And so I told her. About the freelance design jobs. The branding projects. How I help small businesses build their identity from scratch. Logos, packaging, websites. For people who couldn't afford big agencies. I told her about the bakery owner who cried when she saw her storefront for the first time. About the struggling nonprofit who finally got online donations after I redesigned their site. I told her I wasn't making much money, but I loved the work. She listened, truly listened, the way few people ever had. And when I finally stopped talking, she leaned back, closed her eyes briefly and said, You're exactly what I'm looking for. My breath caught. Looking for what? I have a foundation, she said. It's been around for years, mostly run by tired executives who care more about quarterly reports than impact. I want someone fresh. Someone who understands people. Someone who sees dignity where others see inconvenience. She reached into her coat and pulled out another card, this one handwritten. Come to this address tomorrow at 10 a.m. I want you to meet the board. Not as a beggar or a candidate, but as my personal recommendation. I'll fund whatever project you want. Your own agency, nonprofit, foundation. You'll have creative control. Full resources. No strings. I stared at her, stunned. This is a lot. She chuckled softly. It's called gratitude, Daniel. And investment in character. With that, the door opened again. The rain had stopped, and the clouds had broken just enough for a sliver of moonlight to hit the pavement. Now, she added, go back inside. Let them judge your lateness. Let them snicker. Let them underestimate you. But hold your head high. Because you, my dear, are no one's disappointment. I stood on the sidewalk for a full 30 seconds before stepping back inside the restaurant. When I returned to the table, the atmosphere was cold, brittle. Her father didn't even look up. I assumed that was more important than being on time. No, I said calmly, sliding into my seat. But it was more important than being fake. Sophia blinked. Her mother pursed her lips. Her brother scoffed. But I didn't shrink. I just sat there, quiet and composed, knowing the truth in my pocket and the weight of a future that had just shifted under my feet. I left that dinner knowing it would be the last time I'd ever sit at that table as someone trying to be good enough. I wasn't going to chase their approval anymore. I had something better now, clarity, and maybe fate too. The next morning, I arrived at the address Evelyn had given me, a quiet stone building tucked into a quiet street near the edge of the financial district. When I stepped inside, a receptionist greeted me like she'd been expecting me for weeks. Mr. Carter? This way, please. I was ushered into a room with a long oval table, its surface gleaming like polished obsidian. Several older professionals sat waiting. Beside them sat Evelyn, now dressed in an elegant gray blazer with a brooch shaped like a phoenix. She gestured for me to sit beside her. Everyone, this is Daniel Carter. I trust you've read his file. I blinked. File. The man across from me, salt and pepper hair, crisp suit, adjusted his glasses. You're the one behind Lumen and Sage branding? I nodded, surprised. Your redesign of the Carmichael Veterans Project tripled their donations in 3 months. My brother sits on their board. He's still raving about it. I hadn't known anyone noticed. Evelyn turned to me. I asked them to prepare some background, so you wouldn't have to sell yourself. You've already done that, by living your values. The rest of the meeting blurred into vision boards, mission statements, funding allocations. I barely registered the moments. All I knew was that I wasn't being judged for my car, my clothes, or my punctuality. I was being seen for who I really was. By the end, I was officially named Creative Director of Impact Initiatives at the Moreau Foundation. A role with full funding to build a design agency within the nonprofit to support small businesses, social causes, and overlooked communities. A team, an office, a purpose. I called Sophia that evening. She didn't pick up. I left a message. You don't have to call me back. I just wanted to say thank you for pushing me away. It led me somewhere better. A week later, news of my appointment made it into a few local business write-ups. Then regional outlets picked it up, from freelance to foundation. How a chance encounter led to a mission of impact. The photo showed me and Evelyn standing in front of a mural I had helped paint during my first pro bono project years ago. I was smiling, genuinely, freely. And then came the text from Sophia. That old woman was Evelyn Moreau? I didn't reply, but I heard from her brother the next day. He showed up outside my new office in a desperate panic, his bravado gone, his voice suddenly polite. Hey, Daniel. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I raised an eyebrow. Misunderstanding. About that night, the dinner. I was just joking, man. Didn't mean anything by it. Look, my dad's been talking about expanding his chain and, with your connection to Moreau, maybe we could collaborate. I stared at him, silent. Build some synergy, he added nervously. I could bring you in as a partner. Generous cut. I almost laughed. Not out of cruelty, but because the absurdity of it hit me so sharply. The man who once called me a financial liability was now sweating in my doorway, hoping for a lifeline. Sorry, I said finally. I only collaborate with people who show respect, not just to me, but to strangers in the rain too. He opened his mouth to argue, but I had already turned. Sophia tried once more too, this time in person. She waited outside the mural site where we were painting a local school wall with the kids. She looked different, not poorer, not disheveled, just quieter, less sure of herself. "I saw what you're doing," she said softly. "And I wanted to say, I was wrong. About a lot of things." I nodded. "I know. Is there a chance we could?" "No," I interrupted gently. Her eyes welled. "It's not about the money, I swear." I smiled, not cruelly but kindly. "That's the problem. It never should have been." She stood there for a long moment before walking away, swallowed by the city's blur. But I didn't watch her leave. I turned back to the mural, where a little girl was laughing, paint on her nose, asking me how to draw a tree. That night, I got a call from Evelyn. "I saw the school mural on the news," she said proudly. "And the little girl's quote. Mr. Daniel says trees grow tall because their roots are kind. That's yours, isn't it?" "Maybe," I said, grinning. "You keep this up," she said warmly. "And someday, people won't just remember the Moreau name. They'll remember yours."